say this is a very authentic experience when you walk in. It's like you're either in Delhi or Vrindavan with the temperature. I'm not sure which.
Very spiritual.
This is the one perk from giving a class. They always take these out of the refrigerator. It's very cool. Very nice. So we'll change that around a moment, and then I'm going to read from the Bhagavatam, first canto. All glories to some devotees. 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 All glories, all glories. Shri Shri Guru Dharma Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Since we're going to read from Bhagavatam, we'll start with the invocation for the Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So I was going to read from the first canto, the first chapter, Questions by the Sages, text 2. which is not in a particular or short meter. So I'll just read it once, and then we'll do the English translation, and I'm going to read parts of the purport, because it's a long purport. I'll just read some mentions. It's a 3.5-page purport, so read part of it. Dharma parayo jihad kaitavo traparamo nimatsaranam satam vejam vastavam atravas shivam tapatrayo mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimba Parar Ishvaraha Sadyo Didaiva Rujyate Tra Diktivi Shushru Shuvishtatchanat. Translation. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. Is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. So, excerpts from the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prabhupada writes, in the lower stages of human civilization, there is always competition to lord it over the material nature. Or in other words, there is constant, continuous rivalry to satisfy the senses. In the material world, there is keen competition between animal and animal, man and man, community and community, nation and nation. But the devotees of the Lord rise above such competitions. They do not compete with the materialist because they are on the path back to Godhead, where life is eternal and blissful. Such transcendentalists are non-envious and pure in heart. In the material world, everyone is envious of everyone else, and therefore there is competition. But the transcendental devotees of the Lord are not only free from material envy, but are well-wishers to everyone, and they strive to establish a competitionless society with God in the center. Read that again. They strive to establish a competitionless society with God in the center. The contemporary socialist conception of a competitionless society is artificial, because in the socialist state, there is competition for the post of dictator. In the material conception, one falsely thinks himself the Lord of all he surveys, and therefore he is always also troubled by the threefold miseries of life. But as soon as one comes to know his real position as transcendental servant, he at once becomes free from all miseries. As long as the living entity is trying to master material nature, there is no possibility of his becoming servant of the Supreme. Service to the Lord is rendered in pure consciousness of one's spiritual identity. By service, one is immediately freed from material encumbrances. Proper method of receiving this transcendental message is to hear it submissively. A challenging attitude cannot help one realize this transcendental message. One particular word is used herein for proper guidance. The word is shru shru shru. One must be anxious to hear this transcendental message. The desire to sincerely hear is the first qualification. Less fortunate persons are not at all interested in hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. The process is simple, but the application is difficult. Unfortunate people find enough time to hear idle social and political conversations, but when invited to attend a meeting of devotees to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, they suddenly become reluctant. Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jaya. Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Saraswati Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurava Prachari Devasesha Srimad Prasnatari Satari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare. So, thank all of you for being here and for giving me the opportunity to hear Bhagavatam in your association. I was actually thinking about coming in for this weekend, and then I heard that Mother Janava was told middle of the week or so that her time in this world was limited. So I thought I'll come up this weekend for sure and hopefully get a chance to see her. And sadly she passed away the day before, and there's a memorial service Monday night. They're going to announce more details about that later. But that also made me think about we should relish whatever minutes we might have to be able to hear with each other. You know, there's a tendency in the fast pace of modern life, we feel pressure to do so many things, and oftentimes we forget how fortunate we are to be able to sit and hear Bhagavatam and associate with devotees and think about Krishna. And like we know, the example is there with Parikshit Maharaj. He had 7 days. He was cursed. He knew he had 7 days, so he said, okay, let me put aside all other things and focus on this. So in some ways we may think, well, that's very unfortunate. He only had 7 days. But he had the willpower to say, with the time I have, let me use it for the most important thing in life. And we may have more time, but oftentimes we lack the willpower to focus on the most important thing with the time that we have. So we're fortunate to have the opportunity to come together. And of course we know Prabhupada, just the other day we celebrated the 52nd anniversary of Prabhupada's establishing ISKCON, which he did so that these temples, these communities, as you have here, and now we're expanding it so nicely with this beautiful new temple structure, soon to be the front of the building, have wonderful festivals, Janmashtami is coming up, Rath Yatra is coming up, and it thousands of people. These are all expressions of Prabhupada's intensely held desire, of Lord Krishna's intensely held desire for everyone to get a chance to come together and hear about spiritual topics and make spiritual progress. So we're fortunate in that. There may be so many other things going on. So many difficulties may be there, but we should keep this in mind, how fortunate we are. So it's explained that by this hearing process that described here, that we become cleansed. Our hearts become cleansed, our minds become cleansed. Specifically, this verse describes, it's only the second verse of this whole very long text. It says specifically that by hearing this Bhagavatam, we can distinguish illusion we can distinguish reality from illusion for the welfare of all, and thus learn to see things as they are, to see things properly. And how do we achieve this welfare? Also described in this verse, by we can create a culture of knowledge of the Supreme Lord within our heart. By hearing, the threefold miseries go away, reality is distinguished from illusion, and the culture of the Supreme Lord is established in our heart. The problem is, right now, within our hearts, within our lives, we have cultivated or cultured so many things, so many different things, and the world is out there pushing us in so many ways to cultivate so many things in our heart. You know, Prabhupada is describing in his purport about how people are overwhelmed by the desire for gratification of the senses. And it's a natural thing, because as the soul, we've been given this body with the different senses, particularly the 5 active senses are there, our knowledge perceiving senses are there, our eyes, our nose, the sense of touch, all of these senses are demanding some interaction with the objects. They want to be gratified. The tongue is craving for something. The ear wants to hear something. Our skin wants to touch something. We want to taste something. We want to smell something. So we're driven by these things. And because more or less the larger world culture is so rushing so quickly towards this concept of just gratify these different external needs, and that's progress. But here the Bhagavatam is giving us a different idea, that just seeking the gratification of these different needs of the body, it just simply can't satisfy the self. Whether it's a gross need, it's described animals, they're eating, they're sleeping, they're mating, they're defending, we're doing the same thing. We're also concerned with honor, things like honor, am I honored? People are driven, am I famous? Am I well known? I want to hear about famous people. I like to be like those famous people. I want to have a sense of power, a sense of prestige. Don't you offend me, I'm a prestigious person. All these different things are driven by these things. They're driven. So the Bhagavatam is saying that all of these different concepts and ideas that we're cultivating in our heart, they offer us some shelter. This is essential. If I get this, if I just get a roof over my head, then, I'll be peaceful, I'll be calm, and everything will be okay. But we get a roof over our head, and then the nature of the world is we realize, well, my neighbor's got 50% more square feet over their head. So then we think, well, maybe I need something more than just a roof over my head. Or we sometimes think, well, I just need to get a car. And then you get a car, and it's like, well, my friend's got a better looking car. So that the mind, the senses want more and more and more. Basic philosophy presented by the Gita, more and more and more. So they're offering, these different things are offering as shelter. These things. Cultivate this in your heart. Cultivate this desire and attachment in your heart, and you'll be satisfied. But, to use a modern expression, it's all fake news. It's all fake news. It's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's not Fox, it's not CNN. It's global. It's not Russia, it's not America. It's matter and spirit. That's the separation, really. And these different claims that are, sometimes use this word wanderlust, can be satisfied by these different material experiences. It's actually misinformation. The Bhagavatam elsewhere describes, just like we all heard the example before most of us, the deer that's seen water in the desert. There's no water in the desert, but it runs into the desert looking for some satisfaction. So in the same way, we're like that. We're spiritual deer on the edge of the material forest, running into the material desert, thinking there's going to be some gratification there, but it doesn't come. You just have to look further, further, further. I remember when I was young, I don't remember much about the movie, but they had a great title. It was a movie called The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Capture that angst. In my heart, I'm looking for something. I'm looking for something. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining here that we'll go on hunting, we'll go on looking, we'll go on seeking, as long as we want to control material energy, control the material world. We can't actually understand who we really are, and we can't really find satisfaction. As long as we're hanging on to this deeply held concept that I want to control the things around me, that I am the controller. That's part of our material disease. So how do we overcome that? How do we overcome this sense of I want to be in control? We all have that. We have this, I want to be in control. I want to control maybe my family or my business or my car or my house or whatever. And it's so interesting because if you walk outside, let's say you go outside in your yard and you think, okay, I'm in control of this place, I own this, I think I'll make a decision to mow the lawn. You have that range. And meanwhile, there's a squirrel that's making a decision, I'm going to come down and pick up some nuts. That's how they're going to control your yard. There's a beetle who's probably completely oblivious to whatever you're thinking, who's going to try to control by eating a few of the ants that are walking across. And the ants are thinking they're controlling by digging some anthill. And the birds flying over thinking, oh, I can control this place. I'll poop on it while I pass by, or whatever. The same energy. So many people are thinking, you think it's your yard, but the city's thinking, no, this is our tax structure. And the political party's thinking, no, you think it's your yard, but it's our vote that we're going to try to get from you, etc. So everybody's thinking, I'm in control, but we're not in control. We're not in control. So how do we overcome that? It's described in this verse, the need to develop the mood of a servant, which is interesting because in the material sphere, it's also very, very beneficial, although it kind of runs contrary to our nature. But the desire, the key to opening this door, one of the keys to opening this door, is to learn to actually put others first. Material consciousness means I'm first. I'm first, and everything connected to me is first. Whatever benefits my particular social structure is what's positive. But spiritual life begins with thinking, no, let me learn, let me practice to put other people first, and gradually learn to put God first. That's actually the goal, is that we can put God first. Now sometimes people think, well, that makes no sense at all. That's a little scary. That's a little crazy, actually. Because if you put God first, who's going to take care of you? I can't put God first. I can't put Krishna first. Maybe second, maybe third. You know, maybe like my wife, the Philadelphia Phillies, and God. Or, you know, my company, my dog, and then God, you know, or my girlfriend, and then Krishna, or my prestige, and then Krishna, etc. But the secret is to change our consciousness so that we put Krishna first, and these doubts come, well, who's going to take care of me? The Bhagavatam's explaining, and advising us to try to understand that Gita gives this example. If you have a huge reservoir of water, all your small needs for water are taken care of if you're connected to that reservoir. So Krishna is described like that. God is described like that. The source of all beauty, the source of all strength, the source of all power. If we're connected, source of all prestige, all fame. If we're connected to that, then whatever our little smaller needs are, they're taken care of. It's like if you own an oil refinery, you don't worry that much about how you're going to put gas in your car. Somebody says, just work for the refinery. No, what about me? Well, hey, in the refinery there's lots of oil, there's lots of gas there. So in a similar way, describe that we philosophically, gradually through the process of spiritual life and purification, we learn to put Krishna more in the center. And at the same time, we actually become more peaceful. You know, the sense is, well, if I do that, who's going to take care of me? Krishna says in Gita, he's our best friend. And if we depend upon him to take care of us, he's much more reliable than anything else. I live in Washington, D.C. Every 4 years, somebody else comes up and says, just trust me. I'll take care of you. You know, but people on all sides, right, left, this and that, are becoming a little cynical. Like people seem to be a little more self-motivated. They say, trust me. You know. Sometimes, you know, you get in a ride with some driver, and it's better now with Uber because you can see the GPS in front of you. And somebody picks you up, and you know the airport's that way, and they took off this way. So I don't think you're going the right way. No, just trust me. You know it's a $10 ride, it's up to $15, $20, and they say, no, just trust me. You start having some doubts. So in a similar way, the society at large is just trust, but Krishna is saying when we trust him, actually we become peaceful. Because he's our best friend. He's actually watching over us. So Prabhupada says actually that this process is a very simple one. We hear Bhagavatam, we gradually become convinced about Krishna, we associate with devotees, we chant, we eat spiritual food. He says the process is simple, but actually the application is difficult. Application is difficult. So then we have to ask the question, why? Well, one's given here in the very beginning of this purport, because he said that to be actually transcendental, we have to become non-envious. Non-envious, to become free from competition of others. Right now we still tend to see other people as competition. Oh, he's richer than I am. Oh, she's prettier than I am. Oh, he's going to get the promotion before me. Oh, he's getting credit instead of me. She's in charge of this, I should be in charge of that, etc., etc. You know, how come my sister gets the bigger room? I want the bigger room. How come he gets to play first? I want to play, etc. From the time you're a little kid, it follows us up. So this, the Bhagavatam is explaining that that's not actually in the ultimate sense, it's not a symptom. I mean, people think, okay, that's just part of life, but it's part of contaminated life. It's part of the life that keeps us in ignorance, keeps us in quarrel with one another, keeps us from understanding what the real goal is, keeps us distracted from what's really a positive thing. I was reading some history recently, and they were saying that when the Civil War broke out, one of the things proposed to Abraham Lincoln was start a war with the British or the French, and that'll bring everybody together. It's like distract everybody. You know, we have horrible issues driving us to civil war. We just declare another enemy and we'll come together. Of course, we see politics, they do that sometimes. So it's a distraction. These things are a distraction, this competition, this enviousness comes there because it keeps us from what the real purpose, what the real value is in life. So as spiritual practitioners, as Vaishnavas, as devotees, we have to work to give that up. We have to actually work to give that up. We have to become yogis, bhakti yogis. We practice bhakti yoga. So we have to learn to control our minds, to control our words, to control our actions. And if we don't, we're just distracted from the real goal. That's the challenge. We just get distracted. When Prabhupada came to the West, he wrote and he commented how people are so distracted by things here. And just like those of us that we chant japa, the challenge is to bring our mind back to the mantra and not just the distractions. So in the same way in other aspects of our spiritual life, there's so many distractions. We have to fight against the distractions from our minds, from our words, from our actions. And part of that, just to drill down on this topic a little bit here, is this probably makes it so prominently in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, that in order to overcome this materialistic competition, this materialistic envy, this materialistic nature that distracts us from working together, because we understand in the spiritual realm, as explained, there are personalities. Krishna is a person. He has personality. Krishna has relationships with devotees. The devotees work harmoniously. That's the difference, Prabhupada said, between material consciousness and spiritual consciousness. If we want to re-enter the spiritual realm, we have to give up on material consciousness. We can't be spiritual on the outside and materialistic on the inside. It doesn't work. That's called hypocrisy. Or the term which is called neophyte consciousness. So we have to endeavor to bring ourselves in line with what that ideal is. And it's not easy. It takes a lot of work. But Prabhupada explained that if we don't do that, that the unique feature, again, in the spiritual realm is it's based on cooperation. It's based on, and whatever competition is there is in the mood of, oh, look how nicely she or he did. Let me see if I can learn and also do better myself. But here in this world, it tends to be kind of a king of the hill mentality. I want to be in charge, so I drag you down, and then it pushes me up. And unfortunately, that's kind of the history of modern society. So often, whole societies destroy themselves just to try to bring other ones down. Prabhupada, in one lecture, Prabhupada said, the German people, speaking about World War II, he said the German people were envious of the British, but they both were destroyed. The nature of the material world. So, how do we do some practical things in this? Talk about some practical things. Big part of this is we to give up, to learn to not be in materialistic competition with others, to not be envious of other people, within the temple, within the family, within the community, within the workplace. We have to learn how not to criticize other people. It starts with something really simple. Because it grows. From the seeds, big plants grow. We have to look and see where the seeds come from. We all tend to have a critical nature. It's the age of Kali, quarrel, and hypocrisy, and we all tend to be very critical of others. Why? First, because we have the habit. We get in the habit. I remember when I was in junior high school, I was so good at criticizing people. It seems like an art you develop when you're a young teenager. It's part of the maturation process that hopefully we overcome. But a lot of times we get stuck there. So it becomes a habit. We criticize others just because it's a habit. It's easy to do. It's so easy to do. It's so much easier to say something negative about another person than a positive thing, isn't it? Just almost like flows out our tongue. It's very unfortunate. It's just a tendency. I know I see that. I go someplace and immediately I see what's wrong. And I have to stop and think, wait a minute. This isn't spiritual vision. I should see what's right. When Prabhupada landed in America, if he'd only seen what was wrong, none of us would be here. He saw the potential. So one of these devotees commented on Prabhupada was so loving and so appreciative and grateful for whatever little service that the devotees did. And a lot of these people, they were like pretty, wretched condition of life. The Prabhupada saw, no, there's a spiritual being here, there's a devotee of Krishna, let me help him or her awaken that up. So that's the spiritual vision. Material vision is, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So why? It's a habit. Oftentimes we're in pain. I notice this myself. If I'm feeling particularly unhappy or disturbed or maybe physical pain or some emotional, psychological pain, it's so much easier to criticize other people because we lash out. When you're in pain, there's a tendency to lash out. I mean, society today is becoming so violent because people are walking around feeling so much stress and anxiety and anger and bitterness. And you just practically bump into somebody. You say, oh, excuse me, they already hit you. You see videos of this sometimes, people, there's just some minor altercation. And next thing you know, out of the blue, real live, recordings in front of convenience stores. This minor altercation, somebody just pulls away a gun and just kills the person. My gosh. Because there's so much tension in people's heart. So here's being described, we need to give this all up in a practical way to do. We have to train ourselves to not be so critical. So out of habit, sometimes it's because we're in pain. We have to be self-critical, self-honest. Sometimes it's our own internal insecurities. Because I may be insecure, I want to pull somebody else down. If I'm a devotee, if I'm a Vaishnava, if I'm even a mature adult, I have to deal with that. Because that's not a positive thing in the world. If that's the way everybody's walking around influenced one degree or the other, it's not a very nice society. So who's going to take the lead on that? Spiritually minded people don't, if Vaishnavas don't. Who's going to do that? So it's a process, it's a challenge for all of us to overcome this material thinking. So if we want to advance in spiritual life, one of the things we need to learn is changing this mentality. And as Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, here he says spiritual life's easy, elsewhere he says in different angles. In the Gita he says one should apply themselves strenuously to the process of spiritual life. And he says just as if in military discipline. So we should be very generous and flexible and forgiving with others, but for ourselves we should push a little bit. So these are some kind of preliminary things we need to do to begin to open our hearts up, to begin to cultivate, as described, to this culture of Krishna in the heart. And so some practical things, very practical things. I do some communications and leadership courses, and ultimately it's all for Krishna, but it all boils down to like, how do I get up in the morning? What do I do differently now that I'm a Vaishnava than what I would have done before? Now that I'm coming to the temple, how do I interact with my wife differently than I did before? How do I interact with a grocery store person differently than I did before? Because if it's not affecting our lives at that level, where is it affecting our lives? Sometimes probably talk about sometimes some religious communities, they come together to worship whatever day of the week, and then they ask forgiveness, and they go out the rest of the week do the same thing. And he criticized that. So we have to be careful. We don't do the same thing. We come to the temple, but if I don't walk out a changed person, what was really the purpose of coming to the temple? I can, say some prayers, and I can ask for some mercy, help me graduate from my test, help me make some more money, help me get the new job, please help me overcome my physical ailments. Those are all good things. It's nice to do that. But deeper than that, we're looking for transformation of consciousness. And that requires some real effort, individual effort. So just some practical tips to help us make sure we're not in this materialistic, competitive realm that Prabhupada talked about. It says the transcendental devotees of the Lord are not only free from envy, but they're well-wishers of everyone. That's a tough one, isn't it? I can give you 3 to 5 people just off the top of my head that it's really tough to be their well-wisher. Most of you probably don't have anybody like that in the back of your mind, but I got a few people. I can remember people when I was in 5th grade, I can remember people in high school, I can remember people in college, I can Remember one or two people last week, perhaps? But that's not the quality of a devotee. So my guru, our founder Acharya, is telling us that's not the quality of a devotee. So if I want to be a devotee, I got to develop the qualities of a devotee. That's it. If I'm chanting and asking Krishna, please engage me in your service, that's probably give us that interpretation or that commentary on the mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh my Lord, oh energy of the Lord, please engage in your service. But we want to engage in the service, Prabhupada says that he's transcendental, because he's transcendental. He's pure, we have to become pure. And it begins with this describing here, second verse of the Bhagavatam. Transcendental devotees of the Lord are not only free from envy, but they are well wishers of everyone. So that's like a goal for us to work at. So some practical things. One, talking to me too, first and foremost. Any good class, you should be talking to yourself first, and everybody else second. Stop criticizing others. First step. You want to become free from this envy and awaken transcendental consciousness. Stop criticizing others. So in the middle of the sentence, I should try. I feel myself start criticizing somebody. I should be like, hey, did you know that? Never mind. Practice that. You can do it. We're yogis, we're supposed to become self-controlled. We don't sit in ice cold water. That's not our formula, but we're supposed to be disciplined. We're supposed to become self-controlled. Describe qualities of the Brahmana. Control of the mind and the senses, etc. Upadeshamrita, being able to control the senses, the different pushings of the tongue, speech, right? What's our tongue pushing? When it describes us, we're supposed to control the pushing of the tongue. Does that mean stop appreciating others? Stop saying nice things about others? Stop finding that somehow or other in the midst of all the confusion and the mix of qualities, stop speaking about the one good thing you can find? Is that what we're supposed to stop? No, we're supposed to stop the other side. So stop criticizing others, Anuttama and dear friends, let us work on that. Real practical point, if someone is saying something critical to us, don't listen. Now if somebody comes and says, did you hear that, Krishna Das is having a problem, let's say whatever, they're having a problem in their work environment, okay? There's two ways of responding. No, really? Tell me more. Really? I won't tell a soul, except a few. Right? That's one way we can respond, and that's the attitude that Prabhupada was mentioning. Or we can say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Try this one. What do you think we can do to help them? What do you think we can do to help her? What do you think we can do to help him? Completely different response. That's becoming, Prabhupada says, becoming the well-wisher of everyone. What can we do to help? And sometimes people come to us to point out some kind of criticism or concern with another person. Instead of just taking on board and maybe even repeating it, a very nice practical thing to say is, well, it sounds like you have a real genuine concern. Why don't you try to talk to them about it? Because if it's a real genuine, heartfelt concern, they'll probably be heartfelt glad to receive it. If it's not a heartfelt, genuine concern, if it's mixed, then they may not want to hear what I have to say if I'm not pure in my intention. So don't criticize others. Someone says something to us, don't listen. And this generally works. And so, look, somebody comes and say, Anuttama, how come he didn't do this and this and this in the class? He should have done that. He should have picked a verse where he could chant the sloka nicely instead of just reading it. Because why did he pick that complicated one? Well, that's an interesting point. I think you should talk to Anuttama about that. Rather than, I was thinking the same thing. Not only that, but he eats a lot of ice cream, I've heard. And he doesn't like halava. You know any devotees who don't like halava? Etc. Okay. Fourth thing, train our minds and words, is just 5. Train our minds and words to appreciate other people. Train our minds to see, to look for the good thing and uplift it. Following the footsteps of Prabhupada. Prabhupada saw things like that. Where's the good thing and uplift that? Water the flowers. And then the 5th thing, I always remember a nice English expression. But by the grace of God, there go I. So I may see, all of you, because of my nature, Kali Yuga mentality, can see so many shortcomings, criticism, whatever, but I should remember that whatever I find wrong in the world, first of all, probably I have the same thing. They say sometimes I can point the finger and other than, there's three fingers pointing back at ourselves. So sometimes the things we're most sensitive about are things we're struggling with ourselves. But even beyond that, we should think that it's only by Krishna's grace I have any good qualities. It's only by Krishna's grace I'm even trying to be devotee. And understanding how kind of precarious my situation is, let me be a little more patient with others. So those 5 things. Don't let us all try not to criticize others. If someone says something critical, unless it's directly involved with something that I can help repair or I can help improve, don't listen to that. Excuse me, Prabhu, excuse me, Mata, you got some other service to do, Hare Krishna. You don't need to listen to this. Just, politely walk away. Politely, you don't just turn around and just, excuse me, actually, other things to do. So, don't criticize. Someone says those things to us, don't listen. Or, if it's appropriate, say, oh, Mata, that seems like an important thing. I think you should talk to them about it. Don't talk to me, I can't help. I'd like to help, I can't. Or how can we help them? And then train our minds to see the positive things. And I always remember, without Krishna's grace, we would have so many more difficulties. So just in summary, the Bhagavatam and the process of Bhakti Yoga is described in this text. They're here for our benefit. They can help us achieve the highest goal, self-realization and God realization. We should really, really, really try to take advantage of it. To make progress, Prabhupada points out in the purport, we have to stop trying to control the material energy, stop thinking we're the Lord of material nature, and understand instead we're just servants, we're all servants. Be especially careful of this dangerous pit of criticism, having a critical nature and envy, something that we all struggle with. It's not like none of us don't have this, but all of us need to work to overcome it. They're major roadblocks for us. And as Prabhupada said, envy says the one thing you can't use is Krishna consciousness. Arjuna used his anger. We can use our money. We can use our bodies. We can use our beauty, our strength, whatever else, but that we can't. And we should all try to pray and chant to Krishna for strength to make progress. When we see these difficulties in us, when we see we have sometimes these habits or some challenges, we should remember Krishna is first and foremost a person. He's a supreme person. He says, he uses the term, he says, I'm your best friend. So we should take advantage of that. We should call him on that. Okay, Krishna, you're my best friend. I need help on this one. Please help me. And he'll help us. So I'll stop there. Thank you for your kind listening. And any questions or comments anybody might like to make? Well, we'll give about 5 minutes. Yes, Prabhu. What's your name?
Janu Muni Das. Janu Muni Das.
Janu Muni Das. Nice name.
Thank you for your class. In the beginning, you started out with the statement that we can't be happy in this material world chasing after different things that we've already been cultivating, desires,
Yeah, ultimately.
concepts.
There's some mixed happiness discussed, but ultimately the Acharyas say we can't really find satisfaction here.
And despite repeated hearing that and experiencing on some level or another that I'm something more than this body, I still, like clockwork, will try to satisfy those desires, within the realms that's acceptable or not, in Krishna consciousness. And it blows my mind. Like, I know better, but I don't, because I'm obviously...
We're not convinced.
behaving.
There's a bunch of things. That's a great comment. We're not convinced. We have bad habits. We don't have the best association. And Prabhupada says over and over and over again, the gradual process of awakening our Krishna consciousness. In terms of eternity, it's like, okay, so maybe it takes us our whole life. Maybe it takes a couple lives. They just say there's 8,400,000 different species. And we don't know how many times we've been around. So from our context, it may seem like this is so long, but from in the context of eternal time, even the life of Brahma is described as like a lightning bolt in the spiritual realm. Run analogies, get how quickly it comes and goes. So be a little patient with yourself. Push, don't give up hope, but keep trying, but gradually it comes. And the tendency is to, we get some understanding, and then we get tested again, and we get that to the side, and then, oh, I'm not so sure, and that's okay. It's like kind of a wave motion, but everybody goes through that. We all still experience that. And slowly you get stronger and more convinced. But watch your association too. Critical factor. Really try to avoid people that look at you like, you go to where on Sundays? You chant what? You don't eat what? You don't drink this? You don't do that? It's like, try to minimize that association. I was just listening to a little interview with George Harrison and Srila Prabhupada, and George Harrison was saying, but what do I do the more I chant? All the other people in my life, I don't want to be with them anymore. And Prabhupada said, be balanced. He said, you're a wealthy man, you're an influential man, you have a lot of influence on society, so continue that because you're making so many positive contributions, but keep balance in your life. So, we have our other responsibilities, but you can spiritualize that as well. Even in the office, it's not like just do this with devotees, do it in the office, practice in the office, at work, at university. And gradually, we become instruments of transformation all around us. Prabhupada was like one person, physically not a very big person, but from that one spiritually powerful pure devotee, so much emanated from him. So we're meant to be like little embassies, little satellites of his purity. Is that okay? Thank you. Nice question. Yes?
Very nice lecture, especially on the practical aspects. So I wanted to, bring a point maybe more for discussion, not necessarily, question answer. So there is a fine line between criticize and concern. So
between criticizing and
concern.
Concern. Good.
About people.
Good.
So this is something I actually was thinking for many months together, and it's good that you brought up. So we are part of a association or community or congregation, and everyone's have things going on in their life, sometimes pleasant and not pleasant. So the point is, should we leave the personal, deal with those problems? Some people are often shy, they don't want to share, or not necessarily they are, they want to come up to ask for help. So as a congregation, what we can do is can be a system in place. Suppose I could be of help to someone, but I don't even know the problem person has. However, somebody in the congregation may know that this person can be of help. So in those circumstances, could there be a system where we can try to help if we know that somebody is suffering or having problem, instead of leaving that person alone with the fear of being trying to get in their matter? So I hope you understanding what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions rolled into one. And yeah, the answer is thank you. Thank you for sharing such earnest concern. I mean, in a sense, you can put in the category, the term these days is used, devotee care. We absolutely have to care and be concerned about others. I know, like here in this community, you're fortunate. There's a whole team of devotees led by Sangeeta and others with like end-of-life care. We don't have that everywhere, but we really should. Some places we do. Some places is very highly developed. Like there's this one group of devotees called the Grahasta Vision Team, very focused on helping people build stronger marriages. We should have different consultation, counseling for devotees in different ashrams, different stages of life, elders helping them. All those things should be there. We have a pretty big network of medical practitioners. We should create those networks. So in general, yes, we should do those things, and we should be concerned. And to kind of pull it back to, I think your initial question is, there's a vast difference between criticizing and being concerned. And I think the big question is to be asking ourselves in the heart, when I'm hearing these things or speaking these things, is my mood to try to help, or somehow because my mind is influenced by this material nature? It's painful even to say, but somehow am I enjoying their difficulty? That's what it is. I'm enjoying the difficulty. And if that's there, dear Krishna, please change my conscience. I don't want to see other people suffer. I don't want to see other people in a lesser position than me. I really, really want to just become genuinely concerned with others. And we try, and then we act it out in practical ways. The mood's important. And it's the mood that we have to work to develop. It comes and then it kind of goes. We're being very appreciative, and then we catch ourselves, oh my gosh, I'm criticizing unnecessarily again. I'm saying something that's mean-spirited, I'm having a difficult day and I'm taking it out on others, I'm being critical. Okay, stop, take a deep breath. Krishna, please help me. This is not who I am. This is not who I want to be. I'm your devotee. I want every word that comes out of my mouth. Please, Krishna. Right? Words, deeds, thoughts. So words, we have to control. And we should ask, is this pleasing Krishna? Another way to look at it is, what I'm saying pleasing Krishna? And if it's based on how can I help her in this difficulty, that's pleasing Krishna. If it's based on her, I knew all along, I told you, that's not pleasing Krishna. And we all know it. We all know it. Okay? Thank you. Next question. I'm looking for somebody to tell me. Time?
Yes.
Stop. Yes.
You can take one.
You're the boss, I'm the guest speaker. Okay, you said one more. There's one more question or comment? Yes, Martin. Of course. You can say love Krishna. That's a lot easier said than done. Yeah. Yeah, and Prabhupada anticipated your comment, because what did he say right in the end of the purport? He said that what was the exact term he used? The application is difficult. The process is simple. This is text two. The process, Prabhupada, anticipating your question so many years ago, okay? The process is simple, but the application is difficult. He feels your pain. So does Krishna. And Krishna's there to help us. And Krishna says you have to do it. He went through the whole Bhagavad Gita and told Arjuna, have you heard everything? You want me to repeat anything? Are you now ready to act according to my instructions? Because if you don't, you're going to be driven by your false ego. So you choose. You want to be driven by your spiritual ego or your false ego? So that's our choice. It's our false ego that's somehow convincing me that if I say some negative thing or do some negative thing, that there's pleasure there for me. I mean, in the world out there, there's people kill people for life. They get pleasure out of it. There's people that torture animals. They think they get pleasure out of it. It's filthy hearts. So we want to get rid of all of that. And the process is simple, but the application is different. We have to endeavor. And it just starts one step at a time. And one quote I love from Prabhupada, he said, you take one step towards Krishna, he'll take 10 steps towards us. So for every one time we struggle to not say some negative thing, he'll help us the next 10 times do that. It takes work. And we have to help each other. So, yeah, keep helping us all. We're in this together. That's what community means. Community doesn't mean we're all pure devotees and we should point out who's not. That's not this community. We should recognize that. This is not a room full of pure devotees, and we should point out those one or two really horrendous things that nobody else noticed until I talk about it. This is a room full of people that are, living in this age, and we've got, issues. We're all dealing with different issues, but we're here to help each other. And I need your help. I need your help. We all need each other. Okay. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.